You're now listening to the Boys in the Booth podcast with your hosts, Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. New episodes every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Good evening and welcome to episode 143 of the podcast. Cody, Abrams, and Melbourne with you for this one. Guys, we're a week into the NHL regular season, week 2 getting underway. How we doing tonight?
I'm okay, Harper. And do you want to know why I'm okay and not great?
Why is that the case?
Okay, because Tottenham is off to the greatest start ever. I'm okay because the Giants are 5-1 out of nowhere. But I'm not great because the Devils are on game 84 of last season as they've opened the season 0-2 with sloppy turnovers, poor special teams, and abysmal goaltending while outshooting every team they play and losing 5-2 both games. That's why I'm okay and not great.
So the question is now, Case, are they going to fire their coach? Is that the plan?
Well, you know, they have two very good options for replacement. One is standing 2 feet away from Lindy Ruff at all times and just led his team to the President's Trophy last year. The other one turned Utica into one of the best AHL teams around in Kevin Dineen. So two options there. You know, the crowd certainly wants them to fire their coach. He got a prefula of booze the other night, and "Fire Lindy" was chanting throughout the rink.
Crazy.
So, you know, you bring in new players, you bring in some coaching staff. It's like, seems like the one thing that has to change is maybe the coach.
Case, I heard an interesting thing today, and that, like, Lindy may not last very long because both of his assistants were let go, and then he stayed, and 2 guys got brought on. And you mentioned
they brought in a head coach. Yeah.
And you mentioned Andrew Brunette, who I think got treated really unfairly in Florida towards the end, and like he's the first guy I look at as someone to take over.
Oh, 100%. And that's kind of why I thought they brought him in. It's like, you know, the free trial is kicking in, and then they have to start paying after a month. And I think that Brunette is going to come in as the head coach after a month. It's not working out. Like, I had high hopes when it came to Lindy Ruff, but his record since 2020 has not been pretty, and things just aren't changing. So I think it's time. I mean, it's tough to watch, and I'm usually not the guy that's like fire the coach, like all over that. But
because you liked him too, right?
Yeah. Well, I liked him because I didn't like John Hines. But I like John Hines because I didn't like. I can see his face, but I can't say his name right now.
What was his name?
Peter DeBoer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know, like next guy in line, I guess. But they've got a couple options. And to think about all the players that are moving up through the system into New Jersey from Utica, Kevin Dineen also is a very, very good option. So they have a couple options there. And I don't know, it's like maybe time to go for one of them. Anyways, this episode isn't about the Devils and their woos. I mean, I think that they're going to turn it around eventually here. Like, the team is too good on paper to suck this bad, but it's definitely been a little frustrating to watch. So I don't know what else to say about that. I guess I'll move this podcast along and say, how you doing, Chad? I see that you have an Arizona jersey behind you while they're playing Toronto and winning 2-0.
Yeah, stay tuned, listeners. We have 2 more hours of Devils talk coming at you on Devils Podcast Network. I've got this Arizona jersey behind me right now. You talk about the poor start that the Devils have had, man. Even though the Leafs are 2-1 right now, their record doesn't really speak for how they've started this season. It's been piss poor, and not only because the effort on the ice hasn't really been there. You know, Exhibit A is tonight. They're trailing 2-0 to the Arizona Coyotes, and at the time they scored their second goal, that was their 6th shot on net through almost 2 full periods of play. So that's not good. But also because of all the injuries, like Matt Murray is down. Casey, I thought you said something funny earlier when you said his groin was made of liquid.
Yeah, sure seems that liquid way. Groin Murray.
Liquid groin Murray sure seems that way. And about 2 minutes ago, guys, I don't know if you have the game up or not. I do, and I'm watching. Jake Muzzin just went to the dressing room and likely won't return tonight. So
that's part of the plan, though. It's always let Jake start, put him on the LTIR, save some money, bring him back. Playoffs, isn't that the formula?
I mean, maybe if they're able to do that, but at this point, I don't know, man. Is Jake Muzzin healthy ever? Like, it doesn't seem like it. Maybe they move on and Rasmus Sandin steps into a top 4 role. But anyway, there's a lot.
Anyway, that's enough Leafs talk. Back to the Devils for a second. I just remembered something. Lindy Ruff walked out of the first press conference after the first game because one of the media members said, why did Jesper Bratt play so little? And he said, how much did he play? He said, just under 16 minutes. He goes, isn't that enough? And then walks out. Jesper Bratt went on the ice for those 16 minutes. The New Jersey Devils outshot attempt Philly 33-5, I think was the numbers.
WCBR Devils Radio.
Play Jesper Bratt for 20 fucking minutes.
Yeah, and please play him because I have him in fantasy. So.
Oh, speaking of fantasy
corner. How about
segue.
Great segue. All right, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Case, you and I played each other, obviously, in week 1, and I will say, even though you got the win against me, it was back and forth. It was pretty good there for a little bit, and then you did pull ahead and beat me. So, congrats. But it was back and forth for a little bit for sure.
There's a couple times that I didn't think I was going to win, but I have one guy in particular to thank for this win. And, actually, I'll say two. I'll say the first guy I have to thank is Marc-Andre Fleury for being a sieve. And then the second one I have to thank is Kempe. Adrian Kempe on LA, who blew up for 20 points in this week for me and had a stunning night down in Minnesota. Like, that was wonderful. So that was the last night of the week, too. That was Sunday, right? Or no, that was Saturday. There's no games on Sunday.
Right.
So it was like I'm sitting there earlier in the day going, I'm going to lose this week, the first week to Harper, who picked Vasilevsky 6 overall. Like, this is going to feel tough. And then Kempe out of nowhere, 20 points.
That was a good pick. He's dual eligible too, right? He's left and right wing, I think.
Yes, he is, and he plays on a line with Kopitar and Fiala. At least that's the way he started the season.
That line's going to put up a lot of points this year, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we know how both of you guys did. Shocker, who came out on top in that first week matchup. Probably the guy who made the playoffs in the Boys in the Booth League last year. And
I'll say Harp had higher projected points than me, so really his boys just didn't show up for him.
Harp, we picked on you a lot last year in fantasy, and I'm hoping it won't be the same this year. I think you have a decent team. I've looked it over. I didn't love the pick of Vasilevsky at 6th overall, but, overall, your team isn't bad. You've got a few candidates who could break out, so I don't mind it. My fantasy week last week, I took down the other Cody brother, actually, in a pretty close one for most of the week until Saturday, where my boys just went off. Finished 151 to 131. And remember, this is a 20-team league, guys, so there's a lot of good teams in this league, and every week is going to be a fun matchup as well. At the top of the division right now, at the top of the league standings, we've got Book Hockey, and that's my buddy Connor from law school. He's got a good team, and don't let him fool you. He's an experienced player. I think he's going to have, quite a good year. And then number 2,
playing him this week.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be a tough one for you, Case. Not looking forward to playing him. In number 2 is Pappy's Milk, and I think that's who is that Pappy's Milk? That's
I don't know.
Who it is? It's Josh Maley, and he has a pretty good team too. I looked over, and then at 3rd place, I got to give some kudos to Meathead Hockey Club, that is run in a tandem by Luke Sheridan and Alan Atmansky. They have a decent team this year, and they're out for blood. So out of 20 teams, guys, It's going to be a crazy year, and we've been off to a good start.
I will say that the Meathead Hockey Club, Alan and Luke, they are absolutely wiping the floor with me at the moment in this Week 2 matchup. It is not looking good to start. So anyway, hopefully I can put some more points on the board as we get going. But funny you mentioned your matchup against M, Hat-Trick Swayze, and it was like, chatted with him for like 3 days in a row. It was like, okay, I've got a chance. I think he's got me.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but he's got a decent team too, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really going to try my best to stay on top of it a lot more this year and be a lot more consistent. I do like my team, and so we'll see how it goes.
Something I want to plug before we move on for the people who are interested in fantasy and listening right now. Seattle Kraken play 4 games this week. So that's a solid pickup there. One of them is tonight at 10 o'clock. So unfortunately, by the time you listen to this, you won't have time to get the first game in. But 3 more games for the rest of the week. That's a good pickup to have because everyone knows in fantasy, games played are everything. So I picked up Jaden Schwartz.
He was the most added player today. I saw it.
That's right, because he's playing 4 games.
They've looked good early on, the Kraken, and Matty Beniers looking like an early favorite for the Calder Trophy. So whoever's got him, I think is going to have a nice season.
Yeah.
For sure.
Huge shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring the podcast. SeatGeek is a ticket app that takes all the confusion out of buying tickets. SeatGeek makes it extremely simple to buy tickets to all of your favorite sporting events, including Jays and Leafs games, and you can always find a great deal. On SeatGeek, all tickets are scored on a scale between 0 and 10, so you know if you're getting a good or a bad deal. Green is good and red is bad. Plus, Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first ticket purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code Boys in the Booth in all caps. So click the link in the description to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code Boys in the Booth in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek. Summer is here, and you know what that means. Extreme sports like spikeball and road hockey have returned, and so is day drinking. The problem is we're not as young as we used to be, and these summer activities can be draining on our bodies. When you push your body hard or just feel run down, it's extremely important to stay hydrated. When you make hydration a priority, it helps you feel healthier on a day-to-day basis. Enter Liquid IV. Whether you're playing sports or nursing a hangover, Liquid IV has you covered. 1 stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates faster and more efficiently than water alone. It contains 5 essential vitamins, B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C with 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks. It's made with premium ingredients, non-GMO, and free from gluten, dairy, and soy. The kicker? This stuff tastes good too, guys. Liquid IV has incredible hydration flavors like watermelon, strawberry, pina colada, and more, but my personal favorite is lemon lime. So, get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code boys_in_the_booth in all caps at checkout. So that's 25% off anything when you order using the promo code boys_in_the_booth, all caps at liquidiv.com. Experience better hydration today at liquidiv.com. Shout out to Cocktail Bomb Shop for sponsoring the podcast. Cocktail Bomb Shop is a Canadian woman-owned small business, and all of their cocktail bombs are proudly handmade in Montreal. Well, what is it and how does it work? Step 1, you pick your favorite flavor of cocktail bomb and unwrap it. My favorite is definitely mojito. Step 2, drop your cocktail bomb into 8 ounces of sparkling water and watch it fizz for 5 minutes. Step 3, add a shot of your favorite alcohol, some ice, and enjoy. Fellas, gents, boyfriends of the world, these cocktail bombs make the perfect gift for your lady friend because not only are they tasty, but they're Instagrammable as well. Right now, if you go to cocktailbombshop.ca and use the code BITB15, you can get 15% off your entire order. That's cocktailbombshop.ca. Use the code BITB15 at checkout for 15% off.
All right, so getting into the main topic of this episode, and we're going to keep this one quick, the rest of it anyway, and we're going to talk about NHL 23 a little bit and why the game is broken. Obviously, we look forward to the new games coming out every year because it's an update on the rosters and all of the draft picks that are with their chosen teams and all of that. But there are still just so many issues with these games year in and year out, as we've talked about, and as many others know about these games. So anyway, let's just get into a couple of reasons, or just one each, for why NHL 23 is broken, why another NHL game is broken yet again, and some of the problems with it. So, Case, I know you were kind of, back and forth with this kind of thing, but I'm sure you've got some things that, again, you're just like, oh my God, like, it hasn't changed one bit.
I'm kind of riding on this podcast as a passenger because, well, I'm going to tell you that the main thing that's broken about this game is that they've changed so little and added so little out over so many years and not fixed problems and then charge me $90 for every year. So they've made a loyal NHL video game player decide to not get the game. I don't have it. And that's why I'm saying I'm a pastor on this one, because I've hit the brink of like, I just can't bring myself to go get that game. I know that I am going to, and I hate it, but I haven't done it yet, and I'm holding out for as long as I can so that, they have those metrics where it's like sales in the first 2 weeks and like perfect. Not to mention the fact that you always get this game, and in the first 2 weeks, there are so many bugs and glitches and shitty little problems. It's the same thing as FIFA that's happening right now. Like, people have to delete and redown the game for FIFA, and it's terrible. And the same thing's going to happen with NHL, not to mention the fact that they have people who have never watched a hockey game in their entire lives doing the ratings, it seems, because every year the first roster is absolutely brutal. And that's why Harp is going to be putting in some hours, probably days, maybe weeks. He might quit his job just to do an NHL roster for Boys in the Booth that you can download. We'll pay him, don't worry. Not much.
Pay him for his time.
The one thing that I have the hardest problem with is just the menus. And I don't think that that's ever going to change because it never has. And MLB has had better, faster menus since MLB 14. Like, if they figured it out back then, why can't NHL? But just the fact that everything is so slow and clunky to get through a franchise mode is painful. But then the gameplay itself, something that bugs me the most is that you are not rewarded for playing hockey. You're not rewarded for going low to high, D to D, cycling. None of that works. All that works is a couple fancy dekes, backdoor pass, or, glitch goals, whatever glitch goal happens to be. Usually whenever they add a new factor into the game, that becomes the glitch goal. I remember, when they added the leg kick for Sidney Crosby, it's like all you had to do in that game was leg kick and go to the backhand. You score 99% of the time. Probably that last ditch effort on the puck now, you're going to be able to dish 100% accurate passes backdoor, or rip it top shelf while you're Bobby Orring through the air. So it's just you're not rewarded for playing real hockey, but only for playing to the mechanics of the game. That's the one that I really wanted to bring up, and it's just it's not getting there.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because, how often, Case, do we, guys who play other video games, I would say probably more often, or at least as often as the NHL series, how often do we spank Harper, who only plays NHL, because Harp plays the style of hockey that you're supposed to play in a hockey game? You dump and chase, you roll four lines, whereas because we play online and because we're, I would say, more of a gamer than he is, we know the glitch goals and we don't make it realistic, but we just know how to score and play like that.
I'll get outshot 27-10 and win 6-3.
Yeah. Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal.
So, Chad, let's go to you now and just some concerns that you have with the game.
I feel like we're at like a meeting,
I know. This is a focus group.
Yeah, focus group, or
This
like
is
maybe
a focus group. It's terrible.
maybe a funeral. It's like, Chad, why don't you say some words?
Why don't you say a few words? Well, prepare yourself. I've got a lot, and I won't, say them all right now. We'll have a conversation about it. But just to preface this whole conversation about NHL 23, the biggest reason for me as to why I can say that this game is broken is because I bought it on opening day, and I have barely played the game because I've been finishing a franchise mode that I have in NHL 22. I am not interested in playing 23 because it's that similar to 22. The only difference is 22 has the rosters that I created that I know are more accurate than the ones that came out. And there's no shareable rosters yet from people. Like, people haven't been able to make them yet on NHL 23. So I just am not interested in playing the game at all. That being said, I did play it a little bit just for this episode, try to get some content out of it and see what I noticed about the game being bad and everything. And obviously the first one is rosters, guys. Like, that makes sense. Casey mentioned it. The first roster that they put out every year is the absolute worst. One thing that I noticed is that the rosters are completely incomplete. And by that, I mean every single year for the first 1 or 2 weeks of the game coming out, the rosters that they release are lacking a few notable players. Whether the players came from Russia and are now playing in the NHL, or the players came from the CHL and are now playing in the NHL, they don't exist in the game. And that's by design. It's a problem that they've had every single year. And the reason is it has something to do with getting the rights to those players because they didn't have them before, and now they have to get them and they have to put them into the game. But they always do it about 2 weeks late. And a few notable players in the past, Filip Zadina wasn't in the game for the longest time when he was a rookie and it first came out. Vasily Podkolzin, last year being a rookie from Russia, he wasn't in the game until I think the second update. And this year, another Vancouver guy, Kuzmenko, is not in the game from launch. That blows my mind.
Yeah, that's the most frustrating thing, is that, especially early on, but I find I'm doing it, in March as well, that for me to start a franchise mode, I have to spend actual hours just setting up the game, because I have to go in and fix prospects. I have to add NCAA prospects. I have to fix third liners that are like 72 overall, because the NHL, they don't pay attention whatsoever, the EA Sports. It's really frustrating. Like I say that I'm going to start a GM mode, and my friend's like, "Oh, how's that GM mode going?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I just started it last night. It took me 3 days setting up the rosters to be able to play it."
Like, preaching to the choir here. Like, it's the roster is the biggest thing. Like, why is Jake Gardiner, who's probably never going to play again, still 82 overall, high top 4D potential? Like, what?
Yeah, I can't wait to play Montreal, and they have Carey Price putting up 36 saves. Like,
he awesome. Is a 70 this year. This is the first year that Montreal finally made, or the EA finally made Carey Price on the Habs a 70 overall. Mm-hmm. But there are a few other players like Jake Gardiner who are still regularly rated. So
yeah,
there's no consistency, which is the problem. But while we're talking about the roster, guys, and Harp, I know you'll want to chime in on this, I picked out a few guys who I think had some of the worst ratings in the game, just as I kind of scrolled through it, whether it's their overall or not having X factors or their potential. So here's just a few. And these might not even be the most egregious. These are just ones that I noticed right away as I was scrolling through. So Bowen Byram, 85 overall. I don't think he's earned an 85 overall. He barely played hockey last year. Sure, he won the cup and played in the playoffs and played at the end of the season, but he's had injury troubles, which has held him back from playing a ton of meaningful games. So 85 is just ridiculous. He's one of the highest rated young defensemen in the game. So I thought that was crazy. Mitch Marner, 90 overall, when guys like Rantanen and Pasternak are upwards of 91, 92 overall. I thought that was a joke too, considering Marner led all players in scoring from December last year when he came back from injury. That's including Connor McDavid and Johnny Gaudreau. Andreas Janssen at an 82 overall. He just got waived. He's going to play in the minors.
He's playing for Utica tonight.
He's an 82 overall in the game. That's a third line player, maybe a top 6 player. That doesn't make any sense. Context needs to play a role, and it doesn't. Ilya Samsonov for the Maple Leafs, 85 overall, when Matt Murray is only an 83. We knew going into this season it was going to be a tandem situation. We thought that Matt Murray was actually going to be the starter, given the amount of money that he makes and the games that he was, going to play before he got injured. 85 for Samsonov makes absolutely no sense. He has not earned an 85. They should be the same rating, probably both 82 or 83, and that might be generous to some people. Brandstrom on Ottawa, medium elite potential still. But then JJ Peterka, medium top 9 potential. Again, just makes no sense. Final one, Connor Bedard. Okay, projected first overall pick next year. Has 19 points through 10 games in the WHL this season. Absolute stud. Going to be the face of the game in 2-3 years. He has no X factors, and he doesn't even have a scanned game face in the game. It's a joke, guys. Like, those are some of the ones that I picked up right away. That was brutal.
No X factors on a prospect makes them so unplayable. Like, picking them is ridiculous because they'll never become elite in the future. Like, they, for some reason, fizzle out, 80, they'll be high 80s, but they just can't score. Just as the same thing, it's similar to your, ratings being off. Well, some players, when, they're designated as a two-way forward, great, highly skilled players, they designate them as a two-way forward, and it's like, well, they're going to be a 40-point person on your team, and you can't really do anything with them. Like Nico Hischier was always a two-way forward before, and you'd get him up to 90 overall, but because he's a two-way forward, he doesn't have any chemistry with any of the snipers or playmakers, and he would get 50 points, 60 points. It's like come on, guys, like. Oh, it's so frustrating. And like the chemistry system, they tried to fix that, but the chemistry system just became a formula. Like all you had to do was put a sniper with a playmaker and a power forward. There's set connections that made the chemistry work. And then you have +5s and you have a third line team that's better than your first line team. Or line.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous. It's like, it seems like they're going in the exact opposite direction than what we want them to go in. Like, they're making the game more like this fantasy world with these custom leagues where you can have 50 teams and whatever. And, like, what drives me nuts is doing a franchise mode and all of the scouts, the head coach, like, all the names are made up. Like, they're created. Like, how hard is it to just go into a team's staff and just put all of that? Like, NBA 2K does it. And it makes it that much more realistic and fun. And actually, because to me, when I play that game, when I play franchise mode, like, this may sound dumb, but like, I like to picture myself in the GM's chair and like, okay, like, how can I realistically, do this and make this team in the game be like the team on the ice in real life?
Yeah.
And we're getting further and further away from that.
FIFA added real managers this year. So I thought, oh, perfect. NHL will do it too, but no, they can't seem to do that. FIFA's adding freaking Ted, or what was his name? Ted Lasso to the game. You can play as Ted Lasso as a manager and play as his whole team, Richmond, but you can't play as John Cooper, like with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't know. It's pretty lazy to me. I mean, you talk about the custom leagues. I saw how much you can customize the leagues. I'm like, listen, I don't want to customize the league. I want to play within the confines of the NHL. I want to be able to sign players to minor league contracts, to, move players down to the ECHL. I don't need to be able to manage that team. Just let me send them down there and they could play imaginary games so that they can, get better when they're 64 overall and you have to sign them to a contract or you lose them. It's like, I just want to be able to play within the rules of this NHL league, the league that you slap on the title of your game. I don't want to make a 50-team league with rules like 3 points for a win and 5 games for a playoff series. It's like, just let me play the NHL and make that better.
Exactly. I get that it's a video game at the end of the day, but at the same time, like, there's just a huge part of it is like just diving into it and being like, okay, like, this is what the NHL is like. I'm not in the NHL, and so I want to feel that, like, real life experience in a game, and it's just not there.
I understand the amount of customization for franchise mode, like adding the 48 teams, being able to play as the original 6, being able to create teams, etc. Because that benefits, a key demographic of NHL players, YouTubers. That benefits the big guys who make videos about it on YouTube, because that's interesting for some people to watch on YouTube, and they have partnerships with these guys. We're talking the big guys like Tactics and Tugi and Nasher and guys like that. It makes sense, but I feel like they're missing out on potentially an even bigger market, and that's people who want an accurate, or at least close to accurate, simulation of real life events. And I feel like they're missing out on that by not putting in, us, by not putting in, the amount of stats needed, like in a game like Franchise Hockey Manager, that case I know you're familiar with, by not including stats like that, by not allowing you to go deeper in your franchise mode, by playing with ECHL teams, being able to sign two-way deals between ECHL and AHL, being able to sign AHL only contracts, being able to see how your prospects are developing overseas in leagues there, and working out loans between your team and overseas teams for your players. Like, without including all of those, and by not having the proper stats to really make a good simulation work well, I feel like they're missing out on it. Because every single year at the start of the season, what's the first thing that they do in the new EA NHL game? They run a simulation and they see who wins the Stanley Cup. Wouldn't it be more fun if they were transparent about it, gave you all of the inputs into that simulation, ran it 10,000 times, and told you, like, listen, when we run it 10,000 times, similar to something like Money Puck or Don Decision's model, and they say, okay, when you run it 10,000 times, it's actually the Colorado Avalanche who repeat, 32% of the time or whatever. Wouldn't it be better if they were able to give you that information, if the simulation was more accurate? I just feel like they're totally missing a market there, and that's what we want. But I just have no faith that something like that will ever exist in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think they lack. There's so many things that they lack that will never make the simulation work. I mean, especially when you start getting into the later years, it gets brutal. It's like, it's basically a what's the one where you the one where you draft the whole team?
Fantasy draft.
A fantasy draft. It becomes a fantasy draft, like, because there's no sort of gauge of, like, I don't know how to do it myself, like player loyalty, or like, if a player plays 6 years on a team, they're more likely to stay, like, based off your negotiations with them, or if a player is getting to the end of their career, they would sign with a team that did better last year instead of taking $15 million in Arizona. And it's just like, it's so unpredictable and random, and just, it's truly random to the point where I think if you ran it 10,000 times, it just wouldn't have anything concrete come out of it. It's kind of brutal. This is kind of, go ahead, Art.
Yeah, and with trying to get a realistic sim, I mean, you guys have probably gone through this. Like, you're sitting on the couch and you're, okay, like you're like, all right, this is good. Like, and you save you've got your backup file there or whatever. Then you go into it again. You try to finish it off, and like, nope, this team should be in but isn't. Then this team, no, that's no good. And so like it's just probably 1 out of every 10 times you'll get like an accurate simulation, and it's very frustrating. The other last thing I'll say before you guys jump in again and before we wrap up is like with the rosters again, and I mean I'm gonna look stupid for saying this. Chad, you and I talked about this on the weekend. So I get the game opening day, and I figured, okay, well it's early, so I'll just go and edit all of the rosters myself, and then just find a file to download and get some prospects in there so that I don't have to do that. But
created players is what you're saying.
Created players, yeah, exactly. But it's actually reversed, and so should have done that first and then went in and edited all the rosters after. But it got me thinking. At the same time, yes, it was kind of not smart on my part.
Hold on,
surprise.
Harp, explain what happened. The problem was when you went to merge the two files, you lost all of your edited rosters.
That's right.
But kept all of the created players.
That's right. And I'm getting to that. While it wasn't smart, at the same time, why wouldn't you be able to merge 2 custom rosters? Like, where's the harm in that? You should be able to. So, yes, I should have known going into it, this is how it works. But at the same time, it's not how it should be. Anyway, that's my rant.
Let me tell you something funny that actually happened on NHL22. As we were, going back when we were talking about accurate sims, obviously those rosters on 22, like I already mentioned, they're my rosters with some created players that I took from someone else's download or roster download and went through and edited a few. And anyway, so they're pretty good rosters, right? And Tony DeAngelo is a guy who I lowered from the base game roster, the last updates roster. I lowered him. I don't remember exactly what his overall is, but lowered his overall and potential because, even though he played on a good team last year and had a pretty good season, for himself, he's not as good as what EA had him as because he's only offensive, played, third pair minutes and only really got points on the power play. But whatever. I go through and I sim about 5 years of franchise mode, actually in the current mode that I'm in with the Maple Leafs, just trying to see how far I can go in 22 before I start a new one on 23 while I wait these couple weeks, for them to get a roster update in. And Tony DeAngelo won the Norris Trophy 4 times in a row and signed for $17 million for 7 years. 7 years. And I was like, that makes no sense because even in the game, I think he's like 88 overall or something. He grew and it just made no sense. But then there's Cale Makar, who has also grown, who is like a 96 overall and hasn't won a single Norris Trophy since I started simming. So like just something right there like that is just like how, like if there was more transparency on how each value was weighted in their sim, I feel like people like us would be able to make the rosters in a way where it comes out at least more accurate from what we're, predicting ourselves. But I don't we shouldn't have to do that. I just thought it was funny that happened. I thought I'd share that with you guys. Something
that I wanted to bring up, such a small little fact. This kind of just become a discussion about the game, things we want, things we hate. You mentioned Franchise Hockey Manager, and this is one of the things in there. And the customization and editing of the lines themselves, the combinations of the players is so much further advanced. Like you can actually see the impact of what happens when you sim the same game with the players set to, like, I'll use overload as an example for the line strategy. Mm-hmm. If you change that and re-sim that same game, with a different, like, crash the net, it actually impacts the game in franchise hockey way more, to the point where, like, if you put them on all of the most aggressive strategies there are, you get like a ton of hits and a ton of block shots and stuff like that, but you'll get outshot like 50 to 26 because there's different combinations, kind of like a rock, paper, scissors, where if they see that you're running, aggressive pucks deep hockey, they can counter it with different line combinations. And then on top of that, you can have all your different lines set to different type of strategies, a different system, and then you can set how many minutes each line you want to play. You want the first line to have a range of 21 to 19 minutes. You want your second line to be 18 to 16 and so on. You can set it any way you want, but it will impact, like, you can't set the players to 26, 30 minutes a night every night because they'll get beat up and broken. So it's just so many little simple things to make the game more accurate or simulate better that I would just love to have control over. Like, let me choose how many minutes I want the players to play. Like, it's so frustrating when I see my fourth line play 6 minutes in a game. I'm like, that's not really what I had designed when I put this fourth line together.
Yeah, and that's something you can't change when you sim in NHL. You can't do any of that, so you never know how long your players are going to play.
I really don't think the line strategies do anything.
Well, they don't, because, and that's another thing. Your coach is the one who determines what lines play what style, but you're still able to change that. It just doesn't change the way they actually play on the ice unless you're playing the game yourself.
Yeah.
So,
boy, I hope no one came here to talk about HUT.
Oh,
which is like half the NHL demographic. But,
fuck HUT. Like, that's
no
another thing that's just dumb. But anyway, I wanted to say a few more things, just observations I had about the game and, things I read that are happening. So apparently right now in online versus, there's a face-off glitch where you take the face-off on the opening draw of an online versus game and it immediately cancels the game, and then you have to quit the actual application on your PlayStation, Xbox, whatever, and restart it. So that's something that people are complaining about.
Sounds right.
That does sound right. Another thing is, what was NHL23's one of their biggest selling points? One of their biggest selling points was the new presentation that was going to be in the game. So we're talking the glow sticks before the game, Oh Canada and the Star Spangled Banner being played before the game, things you can watch, the new Stanley Cup celebration, etc. Well, reading online through different forums, people are saying that this is only happening occasionally. And the problem is, in NHL 22, you had the option to set your presentation style to, I forget exactly what they're called, but it's either full or partial. So you can see full presentation, which gives you, stats in between whistles and whatnot, and gives you all of the dialogue from the announcers, or you can set it to partial, where it treats it a bit more like a video game and kind of speeds through it. Well, apparently on NHL 23, this option does not exist to change the presentation mode, and it only is stuck in the partial mode right now. So you don't even get the benefit of seeing the new presentation that's been added into the game, which was a major selling point, so much so that they even made about a 10-minute YouTube video explaining why it was important to the game and why you should buy it.
Man, that is so them, like, rushing to the game, get the game out, and then botching the main selling point. Like, it's so frustrating. I will say it's funny that they put so much time into the presentation when the first thing I do when I get the game is I turn the commentators off and I turn the music off because they get so repetitive and shitty that it drives me absolutely insane. Not to mention when I'm playing a game and then it starts showing me my next 6 games in the schedule and I can't skip it. I have to hold X for 5 seconds so I can get to the next face-off. I'm really glad they put so much time and effort into the presentation.
And that when you hold X, it never even works anyways. It just it stays the whole time, and then
I play Washington next. I don't care. I'm playing right now in a video game.
And then Ray says, James, you'd be surprised how many guys don't know who they're playing next. And then he says that 8 more times through that same game. So
I had 9 of those.
Yeah, I had 9 of these games.
A lady from Shawinigan came up with that.
A couple more things I wanted to say, guys, and then I'm done. One thing, Harp, Owen Power doesn't have a headshot in the game. Number 1 overall pick, has a face scan, but not a headshot. Meaning when you scroll over his name, it's just a black silhouette. It's not.
He should now. He didn't have it in fantasy either, but he has it now, or on Sportsnet. Like he literally just doesn't have one existing.
I don't think he has one in NHL still, at least today.
Well, yeah, because they only update the game every 4 months. So
yeah, but he has a face scan. So figure that his face is his face in the game. You know, it looks like him.
Yep.
Can't say the same about Connor Bedard or a lot of other players for that matter. But no actual headshot. And then something like another thing I wanted to say: David Jiricek, couldn't find him in the game. Don't know where he's playing. That might be one of the guys who isn't in the game yet, and he will be in a week or so when they update it. Another thing I realized, and this is the last thing, guys, is that when I was trying to go through and edit a couple players, I wasn't actually editing any rosters today. I was just kind of clicking around and, you know, seeing what some of these skills were and attributes and whatnot and X factors. Going around, clicking through a few players, particularly in the CHL, crashes the game. So that's just one thing I noticed as well.
Oh boy, yeah, it's always rough out of the gate and gets a little better, but it for the most part, like it's frustrating. It's frustrating that, you know, we get so excited for an updated game, updated rosters, start of a new season, and then we run into the same issues, unfortunately.
I also feel like we're at a point where old gen consoles like PS4 just aren't able to run the game as well, and so you see that as a major downside to this game. Like the menus are extremely slow, and they have been for a while now, and it's just it's not optimized, and the graphics don't look any better for that same reason. So it's just not great.
There's literally nothing you can do about that, though. Like to get a PlayStation 5, you have to know 3 people, eliminate 2 other people who are trying to buy one, and spend $1,000 to get it. It's like you gotta bribe someone at EB Games or Walmart or Amazon or something, like, or threaten them. Like, whoa, I didn't say that. No, I'll make sure, you know, when I do lose my self-respect and finally download the game because the boys want to play eShul, I'll make sure to let you know all the things I hate about this game.
You should game share it, Case, so that you can split it with somebody. That's what I do with Adam. Then it's only $45, not $90.
Yeah. That makes me feel better.
Yeah. Anyway.
Still, it's costs way too much and changes too little. So
that's a good way to end it. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, there we go. There's our episode 143, talking about the problems with NHL23 that seem to be reoccurring problems every year.
And I started it with the New Jersey Devils, who have reoccurring problems every single year. So wow, we really went full circle here.
There we go. We certainly did. All right. Good episode, boys. That was a fun, free-flowing discussion, and thanks to you guys for listening, and we'll chat with you again next week. Enjoy.
This has been another episode of Boys in the Booth with Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. New episodes every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Connect with the Boys in the Booth on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Boys in the Booth. Visit boysinthebooth.com for show details, and don't forget, you can become a patron of the podcast for just $1 a month at www.patreon.com/boysinthebooth.